Hello and welcome to Scale Modeling Tutorials episode 9, and this is brush painting technique without primer. So what I'm going to do is just teach you how to paint simply with a brush, no primer, directly to the plastic and achieve a really good result without losing any detail. So starting with the paint, I'm going to use Vallejo Dark Earth Acrylic, and I'm going to mix it 50-50-ish with water. I'm going to make it extremely thin. Use the biggest brush you've got available for the piece you've got. The upper wings here that I'm working on are from a Revell 172 scale Lancaster B3. So when you see the technique start, what we're going to go for is plenty of thin coats, and it looks really shoddy when it first goes on. But what I'm doing is I'm making sure I work the watery paint into all the panel lines and all the features when on the wing, and you will get some crawl where the water will crawl away and take the paint with it. But what you're going to do is you're going to thin that out across the pieces, slap it on there. There's no need to be delicate. Get a really thin but fine coating. I told you it did look shoddy at the beginning, but I promise you at the end the finish is absolutely brilliant. So the first coat really is thin, and it's more about working the paint around the piece to make sure that each area is covered. It's putting it on and taking it off and thinning it down. And when it's dry, it will dry extremely thin, but also extremely smooth. But it will look shoddy. I know I keep saying it, but it does look terrible to begin with. We're going to build the layers up. We're going to build the depth into the paint. And when it dries, it will tighten up over the surface and give it a remarkable finish, considering it's a brush. You won't be able to see any brush strokes or hardly any at all. And when you get the technique down and you apply that final coat of varnish, it looks really, really good. So just even out the first coat. Don't worry about the way it looks or the brush marks. And then we're going to dry it off and get prepared for our second coat. So to rapidly dry our first coat, I'm going to put my homemade drying booth over it. It's basically a large computer fan bolted onto a DVD rack with a USB power. I'll stick a link in the description for you to go and have a look at how I built it in my other channel, 5-Minute Workshop. Please do pop over and have a look. It's a cracking gadget and it does save me a lot of time. So we're going to move straight on to the second coat now. The first one's dry. Again, it's a 50-50 mix of paint and water. Largest brush you've got for the piece, and we're just going to go right over each piece as quick as we can, keeping the whole coat wet. This allows us to smooth it out and go in different directions and make sure we've worked the very thin coat into the model. So as you can see, it's already starting to get rid of some of the brush strokes. We're going to do 5 coats on these pieces, and the reason we do so many is because the thinner coats, they dry extremely thin, and those layer up to become a really tight coat instead of thick coats that can dry clumpy and they just don't have the detail. Each layer will get progressively deeper, and as you'll see through the time lapse, I tried to keep the whole coat wet so I can keep it nice and even. And you'll see when I put the drying booth on its side across the wings, you'll see them dry off, and you'll actually see as the coats get more and more even. It's now as I apply the last couple of coats that you can start to see that the technique really does work. Each progressive coat is keeping the detail, but it's leaving a nice tight thin layer underneath. and the watery thin coats of paint are layering up on top of each other and not clumping up. It does take some perseverance to stick with it, because you think halfway through that it looks terrible, but it really is worth waiting for. And now I'm into applying the final coat, and once it's dry, I'm trying to get a close up so you can see just how good the finish is, and that you can still pick out the panel lines and all the details. How many coats your piece will need will be entirely down to you. The technique is quite forgiving, the thin layers are quite forgiving, so you can actually put on a couple of extra coats without ruining the detail. So the paint is now dry but not cured off, which means it's nice and dry to the touch, but it's still quite soft. And as you can see, it's a lovely smooth finish. All the panel lines are still visible. There's no clumping around any of the detail on the wings. And brush painting, although it gets a bad press and people do like their airbrushing, I really do enjoy getting a good finish with a brush. And that's episode 9. I hope this video has been useful to you. I thank you so much for everyone that supported the last 8 episodes. If you've really enjoyed this, please do give me a like and a comment. It helps out with the YouTube algorithm and gets this video in front of more people. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. I've had great success over the last couple of months with people joining. And please do check out the Facebook group. There's 1 or 2 of you joined in the last couple of weeks. A place to share your work and get some ideas. Thank you all so much for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one, which should be a scale model tutorial special. Thank you. Bye bye for now.